Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thanks so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the March My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. This month the kit features a beautiful collection from Prima called Peach Tea, designed by Frank Garcia, and it has just the most beautiful colors in it. I was recently watching a video from Janet at RTS Scrapbooking, and she had a beautiful piece of pattern paper and it looked like a woven background, and I thought I can probably make that using some paper strips. And since I've made this layout, I have seen the same type of background, sometimes similar but not exactly the same, made by a couple of different designers, and I'm not sure how they made their backgrounds, but this was my idea for how to make that woven background. The first thing that I did was I drew a diagonal going corner to corner, opposite corners, and then I did the same thing with the other two opposite corners. Then I used my ruler and I marked off along each edge in half-inch increments. Then I continued to draw diagonal lines and I used those half-inch increments to help me keep those lines even. When I had covered the whole page with diagonals going in this direction, I turned the paper around and I began drawing diagonals in the opposite direction. I cut the center out of one of the pattern papers. I just left the border, but I think it's a beautiful border, and this will make a nice almost frame for the pattern I'm going to make in the background. I cut out of the center a really pretty pink pattern paper, and I'm going to make a circle out of that. I'm sorry for this big flash of light, but I trace around that circle also, and then that's going to tell me where I should put this pattern in the background. And that will make a little bit more sense when you see me put the pattern down in a few moments. I cut out a whole bunch of strips of paper that are 2.5 inches long, 5/8 inch wide, and then I inked all of those strips with some Distress Oxide in dried marigold. So I just started in a kind of random spot and I began putting the strips down. I am putting them at 45-degree angles to each other, and you could see here that I'm alternating which side I put on first. And that creates the woven pattern. It's really not a complicated pattern. I used pencil to create the grid, and so that made kind of a mess in the background. It's going to be covered up, but if that's something that would bother you, I would recommend using a magic marker. You could see here that the width of the strips didn't match up perfectly with the grid in the background. In some cases, the two aren't lined up, but that's okay. The pattern still wound up coming out fine because all of the strips are cut at a consistent width. And I was just kind of laughing at myself before because I said magic marker. When I was younger, we always called markers magic markers. That was just the standard name for them. And recently I told one of my students that I needed the magic marker, and he gave me such a funny look and he said to me, "Magic marker?" He's like, "They're not magic." So I totally dated myself by calling it a magic marker, but I don't think I'll ever get out of the habit of that. So magic markers, I will continue to call them. I started on the next section of the woven pattern. I simply used the edge of the part that I'd already put down as a guide, and I placed the strips of paper going in the opposite direction. I put on some more ATG adhesive, and then I continue with this exact same pattern all around the page. My main concern for this layout is that it was going to be too busy. The border that I fussy cut out, that is fairly busy, and then the background is busy as well. I have the large pink circle, and that's reading as somewhat of a solid, so that area is a little bit less detailed than the other areas. In the end, I was happy with the way that it turned out, and I thought that you could still read everything that was going on the page, that nothing was blending into each other and too confusing. I used some adhesive to first attach down the circle, and then I attached down that fussy cut border. I wanted to mention that earlier I inked the edges of the circle and also of the inside of the frame with some abandoned coral Distress Oxide, and then I went over the abandoned coral with some gathered twigs. I liked the abandoned coral, but I wasn't sure if it was a little bit too bright, so I dulled it down a little bit with that gathered twigs, which is a brownish color. And now I'm doing the same thing to the outer edge of the layout. I'm first going around with the abandoned coral and then going over it with the gathered twigs. And I like the way that darker border, particularly on the circle and inside the frame, helps to define all the areas of the layout. I have my photo picked out. I have it mounted on some white cardstock. And now I'm using the chipboard that's left over once you've used all the chipboard pieces to pop up the photo. And just like adhesive foam, which is what I often use to pop up my photos, it gives the photo a little bit of height, but not too much dimension on the page. I think that it pops it up just enough. Once I have the chipboard in place, I use some adhesive and then I attach my photo down to that pink circle. In the ephemera pack, there was this measuring tape. I like the idea of putting something below the photo. So I ink the edges of the die cut and I put some adhesive on and I put that right on the bottom of the circle. I wanted to add something to the right of the photo, and so I was thinking that a scalloped border might look nice. So I used this EK Success scalloped punch and I punched on both sides of, I believe, a card from the ephemera pack. And then I attached both of those pieces to a piece of scrap white cardstock, and that's what I'm going to use to the right of the photo. I trim off that excess white cardstock, I ink the edge, and then I'm going to place that right to the right of the photo, and I think that that fills in that space without adding too much embellishment to that spot. Now the layout, as I said, is kind of a busy one already, but I did want to add a few more embellishments. I'm adding these beautiful dimensional flowers that come in the kit. We get 3 packs of them every month, and there were a lot of flowers to choose from. I decided to just use peach and blue flowers. I'm going to have 3 different size clusters on the layout, one above the photo, one below the photo, and then I'm going to make a very small cluster between the 2 words. Now, I'm making the layout title right now. It's going to be called Family Day. I am using some letters that we got in a previous My Creative Scrapbook kit. These are thickers. I like the way the gold looks with this collection, so I thought that this was the perfect font and they fit perfectly around the curve of the circle. As usual, I want to add some photo corners to the layout. I decided to use the blue color for the photo corners because blue is an accent color, and I think that it's a perfect color to draw some attention to the photo. So I punch them out. I use an EK Success photo corner punch. This is the scalloped one, and I ink the edges again with the Distress Oxide, and then I attach the photo corners down to the layout. And when I said that blue is an accent color, I just mean for this layout. Most of the layout is peach and pink, and there's a lot less blue than any other colors. So that's why I called blue the accent color. And I like the idea of using the colors that are on the layout less often to put around the photo. I think that that really helps draw attention to the area you want everyone to see, which is the photo. I put a small chipboard banner on the top of the photo. It says, "Let's fly sky high." I like the way the banner looked there. And now I'm inking up some pieces that I fussy cut out from some of the pattern papers. I'm going to use these clusters of peaches to fill in a few areas and to bring that color to any places on the layout that I think need it. I was going to put this cluster of peaches right next to the photo. I end up switching that up in a little bit. I inked up a chipboard butterfly and I put it next to the blue jar that's on the right-hand side of the layout. I wanted to make the cluster at the top of the layout a little bit bigger, and I'd like to do that by adding some fussy cut pieces or die cuts around the outside of the clusters. So I added a fussy cut piece that had flowers and peaches on it to both the top of the cluster and then to underneath that orange flower or that peach flower that's on the right. And then I do the same thing on the bottom. I add some fussy cut pieces to that cluster as well. The Prima flowers are beautiful just as they are, but I like to add a little extra shine to them. Before I do that though, I'm starting off with some heavy gesso and a sponge, and I'm lightly dabbing on some of the gesso to the flowers. This just provides a highlight for the flowers. I'm not covering the entire flower. I'm being very careful to put it at the edge of the petals, and if there are more than one layer of petals, I try to be extremely careful so that I don't get the gesso everywhere. In some cases, I go back with a second coat, and then once I have applied the gesso, I'm going to add some heavy duty matte gel medium to the flowers as well. I'm going to put the gel medium in basically the same place that I put the gesso. And gel medium has a lot of purposes. In this case, I'm using it as an adhesive. Now I'm taking the flower and I'm dipping it in some diamond dust. Diamond dust is a beautiful, beautiful glitter. It's extremely sparkly, so I love to use it. And diamond dust is a very finely ground up glass, so I wouldn't use diamond dust on anything you are going to leave where children or pets could get close to it, but it's fine for scrapbook pages, especially when they're behind the page protectors. If you prefer though, you could substitute out another glitter. I just really like this one because it is super sparkly. And then I repeat the same process for all 5 of the flowers that I'm going to put on the layout. I removed the cluster of peaches that I had next to the photo, but I'm adding some peaches on top of the layout, on top of the banner that's on the pattern paper that says Peachy Keen. And now I'm using some of that same matte gel medium to attach the flowers down to the layout. And I think you can get an idea here how sparkly the flowers look now. I just love that sparkly look. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a huge windstorm where I am right now, and the whole house is shaking, and the wind is whistling past the front door, and it's, I hope, the last winter storm we're going to have, although who knows. Definitely ready for spring. I use the gel medium to attach down the chipboard butterfly, and then I decided that I wanted to add some florals to the page, which I love doing. I do on most of my layouts, but I wasn't sure what color I wanted to use. But since I love the gold lettering so much, and I also like the centers of a lot of those prima flowers, I thought that gold would be a good color to use for the leaves. I don't plan on using a lot of them. I normally put a lot of leaves on my layouts, but in this case, I'm just going to put a few, so I thought gold would be a nice accent. I put the leaves on the flower that's between the 2 words of the title to the right of that flower because I wanted to have just a little something on that part of the circle, but I don't feel like I have to fill up every single area, but that area looked a lot more bare than the other areas in the layout, so I like the way those leaves look to the right of that flower. Shockingly, I still have some leaves left over. That's very rare. I glued on the dot for the top of the eye, and then I attached some fussy cut peaches on top of the jar on the bottom right, and that completes the layout. Thank you so very much for watching, everybody, and I really appreciate that you stayed till the end of the video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you got some ideas. In the description box, I'll have a link to the My Creative Scrapbook website. You could check out this kit. This is the limited edition kit, but there are 4 beautiful kits that are available every month, and you can view all of the kits and you can purchase one there. You can also check out My Creative Scrapbook on Instagram, and you could check me out too at City Scrapper. I'll put those links in the description box as well. I hope everybody has a fantastic day. See you soon. Bye-bye.